So a little bit of background information through a content outline. The world has totally been devastated by an accidental nuclear bomb detonation, and this has just ruined civilization as we know it. So it's fallen into total disarray, and people have effectively turned into mutants. Some, however, have been spared this terrible fate. Some, like Brian Wesson, an irradiated boy who has suffered from severe disfigurement. However, he is still alive. We first encounter him and his accomplice Piduo, a two-headed sunglass-wearing pigeon, overlooking a burning city while sat on a bridge. And they talk for a period of time and introduce the circumstances, so we become familiar with what's going on and why the world is so different to how we know it. Okay, and their conversation prompts us to enter a flashback, and we find ourselves in an office with furniture turned over, ruined. It's in a state of disarray, and we don't really have any idea of what's happened as such. We just know it's bad. And by the desk, which has been flipped over, Brian stirs. As his view comes into focus, he sees Piduo staring over him. Now, he is inevitably pretty terrified at the prospect of seeing a two-headed pigeon stood over him. So he gropes around for a weapon and finds a conveniently placed pistol at his side. He points it at the bird, and the bird proceeds to protest this move because he doesn't want to be shot. And there's an implied passage of time, so like in the films where you have a sort of a montage and the images float over each other, something like that will occur as they bicker and argue. However, a loud noise, a bang, interrupts the pair, and they decide to investigate, putting a tumultuous introduction behind each other. So they creep towards the source of the noise and discover a hideous super mutant. It has 4 arms, faces protruding from its stomach, and has a morbidly obese frame. Immediately and instinctively, Brian shoots the monster. However, the bullets do nothing, just bouncing off of him. As it approaches, he and Piduo scream. They're terrified of how they're going to meet their untimely demise. However, the high-pitched frequencies cause the monster to falter, backing away as it realises, as Piduo and Brian realise that they can use this to their advantage. As such, they proceed to sing at a high volume, high frequency, and that causes the monster to melt into a pool of liquid, an internal fluid. So they defeat him, and out of nowhere, but we have seen him lurking in the background, an overly excited hermit arrives. He has been forced into isolation and loneliness by the sudden chain of events, and all of a sudden Brian accidentally shoots the hermit out because he surprises him, and panicked and not knowing what to do, he and Piduo look for a moment before walking away. This isn't the end of the hermit, however. He comes to and is partially mutated, and mutters something, implying that he knows Brian from somewhere else. And he vows his revenge. He is not going to let Piduo and Brian get away with this, and that is how we encounter the main overall antagonist of the series of the adventures of Piduo and Brian. So, from a distance, we return to the bridge and see the characters as silhouettes. And Brian seems to be talking to himself. He's talking, but we're not hearing any response from Piduo. It's at that point we learn that Piduo was actually taxidermied prior to the nuclear fallout, so Piduo is actually a stuffed, two-headed pigeon. He isn't real, he's stuffed, and Brian is hallucinating him to life. And Brian laughs to himself as the scene fades out. And that is the pilot episode of The Adventures of Piduo and Brian. Now, my initial ideas, we had Piduo and Brian, and we also had another one where it charted the relationship between a brother and a sister, and as they grow, one becomes more independent and socially adept, and the other one fades into themselves, so to speak, and seeks socialisation through imaginary friends. And over time, these imaginary friends tell the sibling to do bad things and to find a way of making sure that their sibling doesn't leave them behind in favour of a more social life. And whilst I liked the concept, it was too similar, in my opinion, thematically and stylistically, to what I did previously in stop motion, and I thought it doesn't really prove a challenge, whereas Pijuro and Brian enables me to explore topics and themes I haven't had the opportunity to visit yet. Okay, so my justifications for this choice. Primarily, as mentioned before, it's totally different to anything I've ever done before. It's not overt horror, but it's not overt comedy or action. It's a conglomeration of all these themes and the things that I enjoy watching. It incorporates video game, comic book, and horror styles. So all the things I love most, I've taken and worked out how to include them in my piece. So it's a quirky, unusual piece. It's going to be a challenge to write and record, so I'm going to have to think about how to actually make it funny, but without making it stupid, and actually how to balance all the elements so you have a well-rounded program. It's unlike anything else on the market. Inevitably there are similarities, however, there's nothing which quite copies or imitates what I'm doing here. I mean, how often do you see a two-headed pigeon on television? And it works outside of the conventions of adult cartoons or animation, whereas most commonly it's quite crude and bold and very near the mark. I intend to still include a little bit of heart and humanity within my production, so as it's not alienating to those who do not wish to have on-the-mark jokes all the time. Okay, so the main competitors and similar products. We have The Walking Dead here. In terms of the horror and post-apocalyptic nature, there's an awful lot of resemblance. However, I chose to distance myself from the themes of survival and focus more on the people and how there will always be people who attempt to retain their humanity in even the most dire of circumstances. I also looked at how they never use the word zombie in the series, and I tried to incorporate that. I don't want my characters to have too much of a knowledge of what's going on. We need to learn with them. So it was incorporating elements like that I came up with, having mutants and not quite knowing what was going on, as well as having such obscure variations. Like I have the super mutant, who seems to defy all odds and continue to survive. We have things like burnt walkers in The Walking Dead, who seemingly survive fire, and they can still roam about. We also have Tim Burton with The Nightmare Before Christmas and The Corpse Bride specifically. Primarily, the format is the same, it's stop motion. Whilst it's a film, there is still a lot of competition in the sense that people are likely to prefer to pay to see a reputable director's work over something that's not quite been done before. People like to stay within their comfort zone. Additionally, I've looked at his use of colours and costumes. In The Corpse Bride, for instance, the land of the living is dull and bland, whereas the land of the dead is brightly coloured, a Mardi Gras for the dead, effectively. And I've tried to incorporate this in the sense that my characters will be bright, the landscape will be typically apocalyptic, to convey that these two characters are making the best of the situation they are in, and are finally learning to live when all around them has died. We also have Sunset Overdrive with the OD. I liked the way how when you encounter a new foe, it takes you into this sort of cartoonish appearance. You're separated from the game and you can actually sort of evaluate that foe. And I would like to incorporate something like that when new antagonists are met. We also have Resident Evil 2, and Resident Evil is one of the forefathers of the zombie genre and the survival horror genre within video games. And I've looked at how they can constantly create tension and fear without just overtly relying on jump scares or overused horror techniques. And Adventure Time, in a sense, it's brightly coloured, it's fun, it's enjoyable, and at the heart of things, that's what I want the Adventures of Pijuro to be. Fun, over the top, and slightly wacky. Whilst I don't want to target it at children like Adventure Time, I want to draw on some of those sentimentalities so that we have an adult cartoon, an adult animation which has that bit of heart which is missing from many shows such as Family Guy and American Dad. Okay, so my target audience age. My focus group agreed that the age of the viewers.
Russ kind of popped in and was like, oh, I'm off to sleep. Sorry.
So my focus group, agreed that the target age group of my piece would be 16 and 17-year-olds and up. And this allows me to explore a wider range of subject matter, so you're not limited to things which children are going to find enjoyable or be child-friendly. And I can include more graphic horror, because that's an important aspect for me. We have on the market there are no explicitly horror animations, and that's what is important. I think we need to really include that brutality. And another comment was how it appears to be child-friendly, but it slowly matures into a grown-up and horrifying piece. And that is also really good. We want it to seem nice and bright, but then actually have more darker undertones. And the higher age boundary also enables me to incorporate gorier fight scenes, slightly stronger language, and parodies of pop culture. So, for instance, like Family Guy parodied Star Wars, or South Park parodied YouTube stars. And I do not want to make it too grown up in terms of the content. I don't want it to be crude or rude. I want it to be, at the heart, human and sort of finding the fun in everyday situations in a more obscure variation of the world. Okay, so gender. The focus group felt it would be more males watching, as post-apocalyptic stuff is typically targeted at them. And additionally, men have a preference for horror and outnumber females 11 to 10 and 2 to 1 in comedy. And I have not included any sexism.
Sorry.
Yeah. So I haven't included any sexism or extreme crassness, so this doesn't totally eliminate the potential for females to tune in. It still makes it approachable, and it doesn't eliminate them from the general audience by saying we are going to make fun of women, and which is something we really don't want to do. And likewise, this hasn't affected my casting choices, as I have used 2 adolescent girls to portray Joe and Brian in order to replicate the high-pitched voices that they will possess. And the socio-economic group is primarily, they thought Group E students would be the target group. However, as they have parents who will pay for the subscriptions and the channels. However, another person said they felt it would be Groups B to E students, as they will have the money to pay for the services and be able to have the time to watch it, because unlike Group A, they won't have constantly over the top professions which require their constant attention. During all this, I decided to target it between Group C2 and E, so you do have the time, but it's not for sort of really established professionals. Additionally, with the fact that adolescents, who are my primary target audience, spend 2.1 hours watching television a day, with 38% downloading their programme and a further 60% proceeding to view it on a tablet or other online connected device, I decided to make it accessible on online and short, snappy episodes, so it fits in with that 2.1 hours. And lifestyle. As it will be episodic and progress consecutively, people will have to tune in regularly so that they can gain the full storyline. So again, that's reiterating why the socio-economic group will have to be sort of C2 to E. Both focus group members agreed that watching this will be straight, white, British, American individuals primarily, not to exclude anyone. We won't be making fun of people with other attributes or traits.